grew up in a black church. Call and response is very important. Lets me know that you're awake and you're falling asleep. So let's try this again. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There we go. I got a black audience. That's cool. All right. So my name is Dr. Cokley, and I am honored to spend a few moments before you today talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. The topic of the imposter phenomenon. Now, what you'll see from the title of the talk is that it says the role of the imposter phenomenon in ethnic minority student achievement. I'm very well aware that not all of you identify as being ethnic minorities, and that's okay, because one of the points that I'm going to try to make to you all is that the imposter phenomenon is something that many people experience. It's not just ethnic minorities, it's not just any particular demographic group, that we all at some point have felt and struggled with feelings of imposterism. So don't let the title of the talk make you feel as though you might not be able to relate or connect to the material, because I suspect that many of us will be able to connect to it. So, on that note, let us get started. So, let's start off with a basic definition of the imposter phenomenon. So the imposter phenomenon is the experience among academically or professionally successful individuals of feeling like intellectual frauds. So that's a mouthful, so let's break it down. It is the experience among academically successful individuals feeling like intellectual frauds, feeling like that they are fakes, feeling like they are phonies, feeling like they have somehow been able to fool people into thinking that they are more competent than what they really are. Now, it's estimated that 70% of people have experienced feelings of imposter. Now, I want to do something here. Now, the lights are off, so we can't see each other, so maybe you'll feel some anonymity. By show of hands, how many of you have ever, during the course of your life, felt like an imposter? Just by show of hands. So, I can see all the hands, so by my estimation, that's more than 70%. So clearly it's something that many of us can identify with. So where does it come from? This idea, where did it come from? It's based on 5 years of psychotherapy with over 150 highly successful, primarily white, middle to upper middle class women. A psychologist by the name of Pauline Clance, along with Suzanne Knight, conducted therapy with women who were very successful in various occupations. And what they noticed, and the reason that they did this was that they noticed that there was a common theme with these women. And that theme was that in spite of how accomplished they were, in spite of how successful they were, in spite of how smart people told them they were, they nevertheless felt like they weren't nearly as smart or competent as people believed them to be. And it was a theme that was so pervasive that these psychologists said, you know, we need to get together and we need to do therapy with them, group therapy. Because these women initially were sort of seen individually, but because they saw this theme sort of reoccur, they ended up having more like a group therapy situation. All right, so what are some of the things that we observe? So I'm a psychologist, all right? And so what are some of the things that we observe about people who suffer from imposterism? There is no experience of internal sense of success. So again, those awards that you won, you don't internalize them. It's hard for you to feel good about these awards. You have a difficult time of truly internalizing your successes. Consider themselves to be imposters. Again, you think that you are a fraud. Believe themselves to be mistakenly admitted to graduate or professional school. Now, this is something that maybe students, might be able to relate to. That when you apply to UT, and when you were accepted, thinking to yourself, I pulled one on them. I fooled them. Because I don't really belong here, but somehow they were able to sort of look at my application and determine that, I deserve to be here. But they don't really know who I am. They don't really know maybe some of the challenges that I've had. And so whatever it was that I did in my application, I basically fooled them into accepting me here. Now, of course, I'm sure that none of you have ever felt that. You probably don't experience that. So this is probably something you can't relate to. But I happen to know some people who have, and as I'll share, momentarily, I've experienced those feelings myself. These individuals feel overvalued by their friends and by their colleagues. So when your friends are patting you on your back, your colleagues are telling you what an outstanding job that you've done, you're like, why do they keep praising me this way? I don't deserve it. They believe that the scores that they've got, whether it's standardized test scores or scores on a test in the classroom, that they believe that these high test scores are due to luck or due to professor or teacher, they made a mistake in their grading, or because of faulty judgment of professors. Because these professors, they could not have really knowingly given me this good grade. There had to be some sort of mistake in their grading. And they believe that this is a mistake rather than the fact that, hey, maybe I'm smart. Maybe I actually deserve this grade. Maybe I have skills. Maybe I have some abilities. And so these individuals are highly self-critical. And they discount praise at every turn. Again, it doesn't matter how many times you try to tell them how smart they are, how competent they are. They just, for whatever reason, have an inability to truly accept that praise. And repeated successes don't break the cycle. So you keep doing well in school. You keep getting these good grades. You keep achieving over and over and over again. And in spite of continuing to succeed, that does not break the cycle of you feeling like you're an imposter. Now, are you feeling me? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any of you ever felt that way before? Any of you ever had those sort of feelings that you struggle with maybe? Okay. So we have something that's called the imposter cycle. So let me see if I can walk you through this. All right. So over here we have, a basic project or task. Maybe you're studying for a test. Maybe you're working on a project. Maybe you're writing a paper. And of course, this project or task results in you sort of feeling anxious. You feeling some self-doubt. You worrying quite a bit. Now, you have two paths that you can take. So one path says, you know what? I've got to over-prepare. I'm so nervous about this test. I'm so nervous about this paper. I'm so nervous about this project that I have got to over-prepare. I've got to stay up hour after hour after hour, day after day after day, until I have this thing perfected. So you over-prepare. And then you accomplish the task. And you feel a sense of relief. But you attribute that success to your effort. No, it's not. I didn't do well because I'm actually smart. I did well because I had to bust my butt. I had to spend hour after hour after hour losing sleep. So it was my effort that resulted in the outcome, not because I'm actually competent. Okay? So that's one path. And another path that you can take is procrastination. You are so consumed with the task itself that you can't pull the trigger. That you ruminate over it, you obsess over it over and over again. You're like, okay, I know that I need to do this. I need to study. I need to do the research for this paper. I need to sort of get to work. But you keep procrastinating and procrastinating and procrastinating until the very last minute. The paper is due tomorrow. The test is tomorrow. I'm got to put in the work at some point. And so finally, you do. And lo and behold, you pull it off and you do well. So what do you attribute your doing well to? Well, it's not because you feel like you're smart. It's because of luck. again, but you attribute it to luck. And the positive feedback that you would get, the positive feedback again is getting the good grade, getting the good score. You discount the positive feedback. So it doesn't matter that you did well, because you're going to find a way to diminish your success. Again, you'll say, I either worked really hard or it was luck. But it's not because I'm smart. So if I were to ask you, by show of hands, how many of you believe that you are really, really smart? Raise your hand. I want you to look around. I see one. I see one hand, y'all. So can you tell me what I am to make of that? Please.
I don't consider myself very smart. I just consider myself hard work.
Ah, you're a hard worker. Effort. Interesting. Okay. Yes. Oh no. I'm not sure what's going on. Hopefully that will fix itself. But to your point, someone doesn't like this message. But to your point, so I think that's a really good observation that maybe in this environment we are encouraged to say those sort of things, or to think that about ourselves. Maybe you're seen as being arrogant, or just sort of cocky. But why couldn't it be that you feel confident? And there's a thin line, of course, between arrogance, cockiness, and confidence. But why is it difficult for us to say positive things about ourselves? If someone that you love, that you admire, was smart, would you tell them that they're smart? So you wouldn't have any problems telling them that they're smart. And would you be concerned if they had difficulty accepting that? How would you try to convince them that they're smart? You would talk about their accomplishments. Okay? And what if they said, I just got lucky. Anyone could have done what I did. Right? You see the conundrum, right? And then this cycle comes back to our mental health. And so we go through this, and these imposter feelings are related to continued anxiety, continued depression, increased self-doubt, lower self-esteem, perceiving ourselves to be fraudulent, and the cycle starts over again. I see a hand. You said being lucky is a skill?
I mean, sometimes.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. But the point here is that when you can't accept nice things said about yourself, when you can't accept the fact that people want to give you credit for being intelligent. So maybe I asked the wrong question. So let me rephrase it. Maybe we'll get a different response. How many of you, by show of hands, believe that you are intelligent? Okay, we got more hands. Okay, that's better. Ideally, I would like to see everyone raise their hand, because I believe that everyone is intelligent, maybe in different ways. But this is the sort of thing that we have to work on as psychologists. Maya Angelou, familiar with her? Great poetess. My alma mater is Wake Forest University. She was a professor there for many, many years. She said, quote, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, uh-oh, they're going to find me out now. I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find me out. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. One of the greatest poetesses of our lifetime thinks that she has basically fooled people. As great as she was, as world-renowned as she was, even Maya Angelou suffered from this sense of imposterism. Right? Now, I consider that pretty profound. Does this guy look familiar to you? We'll say a little bit more about him. But I wrote a little article. I was asked to write an article where I reflected on my own experiences at Wake Forest University. Wake Forest University is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. And I talked about sort of what it was like, as a minority student, as a black male student, attending this prestigious, or some people say prestigious, elite private school. And I attended that university between 1987 and 1991. There weren't a lot of minority students at that time. I came from a small town called Pilot Mountain, North Carolina. Many people have not heard of Pilot Mountain. If you've ever watched the Andy Griffith Show, it was what they referred to as Mount Pilot. I used to be teased about that. But that was where I came from. And I had what was called an academic need-based scholarship. So I was a good student in high school, didn't come from a lot of money, and so they gave me a need-based academic scholarship. All I had to do was maintain, a 3.0 GPA. That was all throughout school, and I would keep my scholarship. Easy, right? Piece of cake. No problem. So it took me a few years before I felt comfortable telling this story. And I said, Kevin, how personal do you want to get? Like, how much of your business do you want people to know about you? And then after I became a full professor, I said, you know what? I got a job for life. They can't take it away from me. So I might as well tell them the truth about who I am and where I came from. So let's do a quick calculation, shall we? Freshman year, I, like many students, thought that I was going to med school. All right. So, I'm going to tell you what classes I took. I'm going to tell you what grades I made, and you tell me what my GPA was. Y'all ready to do this? All right, okay. We have a chemistry, we've been on a chemistry professor here. I took chemistry. Basic chemistry. It wasn't, any sort of advanced chemistry, just basic chemistry. F. Okay. All right. I took biology. F. I took Latin because you were told at the time that if you want to go to med school, you need to take Latin because a lot of medical terms have Latin derivatives. And I take Latin. I did good at Latin. C. And I took psychology. I'm a psychology professor, so surely I aced that, right? C. So you tell me what my GPA was. I heard some 1.0. Can I get a 0.9? Can I get a 0.8? Can I get, okay, you get the point. I was immediately placed on academic probation my freshman year, first semester. And so you all know the thing about GPAs, right? It's much harder to raise them than it is for them to go down. So I spent my entire career as an undergraduate student just trying to get my GPA to be decent. I wasn't talking about graduating summa cum laude. I wasn't talking about graduating magna cum laude. I wasn't talking about graduating cum laude. I was talking about graduating thank you laude. Please, just let me get out of here. That was my goal. Because everybody else was pretty much out of rank. And I did graduate thank you laude. As I reflect back on that experience, I did not have the language that I have now to understand part of what I was experiencing. felt like a tremendous imposter. This little black boy from rural Powell Mountain, North Carolina, from a very sort of poor family relative to my other sort of Wake Forest colleagues, going to this prestigious school. What business did I have there? What business did I have there? Did I really belong there? Had I really earned my way there? Or was this just some sort of gift? Affirmative action, we got to have a few sort of black and brown bodies here, so we'll go ahead and just give you a shot. So, in retrospect, looking back, I can now better understand some of the things that I was struggling with during that time in my life. So, I want to play this clip.
To enter into an elite school when your high school counselor has told you're not good enough, when all of society sort of looks at kids of color or kids from poor communities or rural communities as not belonging. I, like many others, walked into that school with a stigma in my own head. More young people nowadays call it imposter syndrome. I don't know if they call it that in Britain, where kids like me feel like they don't belong. And I had to work to overcome that question that I always ask myself, am I good enough? And I write about that. That's a question that has dogged me for a good part of my life. Am I good enough to have all of this? Am I good enough to be the First Lady of the United States? And I think that many women, and definitely many young girls of all backgrounds, walk around with that question. But how I overcame that is how I overcome anything: hard work. So whenever I doubted myself, I just told myself, let me put my head down and do the work. And I would let my work speak for itself. And I still find that I do that. I still feel that at some level I have something to prove because of the color of my skin, because of the shape of my body, because of who knows how people are judging me.
Michelle Obama was talking about her experience as a student and feeling like an imposter. And she, what she says is, back, when I was in school, they had this term, called imposter syndrome. I don't know if you all sort of, talk about that today, but as a little black girl, that was sort of what she experienced. And, she clearly was very smart, but she talked about feeling like an imposter, and she even, as I understand it, isn't she going to be in Austin soon? Anyone going to see that by chance? Any of you fortunate enough to? You got a ticket? Right. But she talks about even being. She talks about even when she became, first wife, and Barack became president, that she still struggled with feelings of imposter as a black woman being in the White House, knowing that all these eyes were on her. It didn't matter that she has an Ivy League law degree. It didn't matter that she had all these incredible accomplishments. What she was concerned about was being, essentially a black woman in the White House and knowing that all eyes were on her and people doubting her, questioning why was she there? Did she have the right to be there? And so, when I first came across this clip, I thought to myself, if Michelle Obama can feel like an imposter, made me feel a little bit better about myself. Because she's like all that. Like, she is. And so, my point is that many of us, many big-time, very accomplished people will talk about these feelings. How many of you watched How to Get Away with Murder? Right. So, who's the star of that show? Viola Davis. So, if I'm not mistaken, did Viola Davis win a big award? What was it? Was it us? I don't know. Was it an Oscar? Did you win an Oscar for TV shows? Is that for movies? What was it? An Emmy, thank you. So when she received an Emmy for Best Actress, it was really cool because a story was written, and I started doing some research on this topic. And the story featured Viola Davis and her talking about feeling like an imposter, and they actually cited my research. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. My research is actually being connected to Viola Davis. Like, that doesn't happen very often. But she talked about what it was like being a black female actress and a darker-skinned black female actress in Hollywood, and how long she had toiled in obscurity and just really sort of not being taken seriously, even though she is an incredible actress and totally, it's like really well accomplished. But she, even her, as accomplished as she is, suffered from imposter. And so it's not uncommon. We've already said that 70% of us experience it at some point in time. And so it shouldn't surprise us when we have these individuals who have experienced it. Looks like I gotta talk more until my slides come up. By show of hands, before I mention the term imposter, how many of you were already familiar with the term? Like, you heard it, you were somewhat familiar with it? And was it a term that you felt like applied to you? A few weeks ago, I was in North Carolina and I was giving a talk to an association of minority attorneys, mostly African American attorneys. And I gave a talk that was focusing on what it was like to be an African American attorney in an overwhelmingly white profession. And after my talk, a young African American male attorney comes to me and he said, like, how are you gonna do that? I'm like, what? How are you gonna just tell my whole story? I mean, like, you just told my whole life story. Like, you just put my business out there for everyone to see. And what I recognized was that it was deeply personal, because I talked about what it was like sort of going through school and feeling like people didn't feel like you belonged, feeling like people were questioning your right to be there, and then taking that with you into your profession. And so this was something that he carried with him, but had never dared talk about publicly. And so it wasn't until I did my talk that he realized that I had given a term to something that he'd been carrying and feeling for much of his life. So, what do we know about this imposter? So individuals who have, who are high in imposter feelings, it's been linked to symptoms of depression, to generalized anxiety, and to low self-esteem. High imposter feelings have also been linked to poor mental health and increased levels of depression and anxiety among ethnic minority students. I became interested in this topic, again, because my research tends to focus on students of color, especially African American students, in predominantly white educational settings. And when I came across this research by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Iron, I was fascinated with it because, one, I could identify with the experience, but two, as I was reviewing the literature, I realized that very little had been written about regarding students of color, ethnic minority students. And so I thought that this was a concept that I could take and start an entirely different research program, because the literature was really not very full with this sort of research. So I wrote a book to sort of talk about the experiences of being an African American student. And I wrote a book to really sort of set the record straight. I examined achievement of black students, academic achievement, and I challenged this notion that black students were somehow sort of anti-intellectual. And I did this because I wanted to help everyone better understand psychology of African American students. So again, I thought about my own experiences as a black student. I thought about the experiences of many black students that I've known over the years. I thought about all the sort of narratives that we hear about black students in particular, but sometimes the students of color in general, about how they don't value school, they don't value education. And so I wanted to write this book to really interrogate and to challenge those notions. And so part of what as I sort of began to sort of wind down, this is February. What is February? implications for black students when certain black history that could help lessen feelings of imposterism is left out of the curriculum. So I began to think about, so what is it that we are doing educationally that might be contributing to students of color feeling like imposters? And then what are the implications when imposterism among black students is not addressed? All right, so who are these? Who are Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Dorothy Vaughan? Uh-oh, do you know? All right. Well, you want a mathematician, aerospace engineer. So how did you know that he was a sophomore? You're not. You're an aerospace engineer. All right. So many of us don't recognize these things. So these individuals are African-American mathematicians, and there was a movie that came out, I guess what, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, called Hidden Figures. And it's this untold true story about women who were really sort of like behind some of the, one of the greatest achievements that we experienced in this country. And I have a clip, and I hope that this will work. Let's try it.
It was the early 60s, and America was on the brink. The Cold War was being fought in the sky, while the civil rights movement was playing out in the streets. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson were at the center of it all. 3 African-American women working as mathematicians at NASA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. They were actually called human computers by NASA officials, and their skills changed the space program forever. Johnson did the math that put John Glenn into orbit and helped make this possible.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Vaughan became NASA's first black supervisor, and Jackson became the agency's first black female aerospace engineer. Yet despite their impact, for decades, their stories were untold and their place in history ignored. But thanks to Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe, they are no longer hidden figures. Taraji, when you read this, what appealed to you?
I was like, how did we miss this in history? Why don't we know about these women? And I got angry, and I felt like it was my mission to do the film. It felt like a missing part of history that needed to be implanted back in.
Octavia, what is the backstory of how this moved, how the story itself surfaced?
Margot Lee Shetterly, who wrote the book Hidden Figures, grew up, her dad was an engineer at NASA. They were looking through pictures, and there was this small group of African-American women in one of the photographs, and she said, "Who are these women?" And her dad told her, and then realized that nobody knew about the contributions that these women had made to the space program. And she wrote a 54-page proposal that ended up on Donna Gelati's desk, and the rest is history.
And Janelle, when you learned that these women were virtually ignored by the history books, what was your reaction?
I was sad because clearly these are 2 American heroes. And it's such an honor to play Miss Mary Jackson and to honor Katherine and Dorothy and every woman who helped break down those barriers and get us into space.
What kind of barriers did they face?
1961-62, Voting Rights Act didn't pass till 63-64, so they didn't have the right to have any voice in our democracy. And the letter of the law of the land was segregation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every obstacle was stacked against them, and when I met Miss Katherine Johnson, she didn't harp on it. She would just say, "Well, that's the way it was. That's just how things were, and I did my job."
I know President Obama gave Katherine the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2015. Many of them are now, thanks to this film, are being recognized. Janelle, describe what Mary was like and a little bit of her backstory for me.
Mary was a fighter. She was a leader. Not only was she genius
not only was she such a champion for all of the women around her, her sisters and friends, she wasn't going to sit back idly and allow anyone to discriminate against her because of her gender or her race. So she fought.
If you were a white male, would you wish to be an engineer?
I wouldn't have to. I'd already be one.
Octavia, tell me a little bit about Dorothy.
Dorothy Vaughan was also a brilliant mathematician, but she was mechanically inclined. Her dad taught her from early age how to disassemble and reassemble any electronics. And at that time, IBM was a computer that basically would fill this room, and it had been commissioned by NASA to basically take the place of the women, but they couldn't get it to work. And Dorothy would sneak into the lab. She got it to work. And then she had the vision that once the machine started working, they would be out of jobs. So she taught herself to program it, and then taught all the other women at NASA to program it. So she really was the mother of the women who code movement.
What about Catherine?
I would say Catherine is a quiet storm. I think when you talk about someone who's mathematically inclined, they're calculating every move, their words, everything. That's how they think.
You think you could find me the Fernet Frankfurt's data using the Graham-Schmidt?
Orthogonalization algorithm? Yes, sir. I prefer it over Euclidean coordinates. She, again, was above it all. That's the first thing I wanted to talk to her about. How did you feel with all those obstacles? You know, and she just, it didn't bother her. It was, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could be that strong. Yeah. And that's why I call her a quiet storm. You know, she didn't say a word about, you know, the conditions.
So, what if Mary, Catherine, and Dorothy had become overwhelmed by feelings of imposterism as black women in an overwhelmingly white male field? And you know, if you think about that time, and you think about sort of what they had to go against, if you see the movie, I would encourage you to really look at the movie. But what if, while they're sitting in those classes and being surrounded by, you know, essentially white men, they had felt like, you know what, we can't do this. Black women aren't supposed to be in these sort of spaces. What if they had felt overwhelmed by these feelings of imposterism? And we would have missed out on something terribly special and important for the history of this country. And why isn't this history taught in every school to every student? Like, I'm mad that I was never taught this. And think about the pride that it would instill in students of color to know that this is what you can do, this is what you can be. But you can't be what you can't see if you're never exposed to it in the curriculum of the classroom. What would it mean for black students in STEM disciplines to know that there were people who came before you who were able to do this? And they might very well have felt like imposters, but they were able to work through that, and they were able to make it. And that in spite of how you might be feeling, that you too can also make it. Don't you think that every American student, no matter your race, your ethnicity, your culture, your background, shouldn't every American student be exposed to this story, to this history? So, what can professors do to address imposterism among students? Well, we can include more books and more articles written by racial and ethnic minorities. We can discuss the contributions of racial and ethnic minorities in our field. Now, some might say, well, there are no contributions at all by racial and ethnic minorities in my field. I would challenge that, because I don't think there's a field that exists where there has not been some contribution of racial and ethnic minorities. Just look harder. Have meetings with racial and ethnic minority students and affirm your belief in their potential and deservedness to be there. Students need to know that we believe in them and that we believe in their ability to succeed. And so to hear it from the very ones who are teaching them is something that means so much to students. And so finally I want to end with from imposter to professor. You too can be a professor. And what I tell people is, if I could be a professor, if I could be a part of the UT system of Academy of Distinguished Professors, if I can be a director of a policy institute, if I can achieve all that I've achieved, given what I've already told you about where I came from and how I started, if I can do it, you know damn well that you can do it too. All right? And so that's my parting message to you, that don't succumb to feelings of imposterism. It's normal, and it's something that many of us struggle with. But understand this, that you have to trust that your being here is something that you earned and that you deserve. It wasn't just given to you. People didn't feel sorry for you and say, you know what, I'm going to throw this person a bone. Let's let them come here to the University of Texas. They don't really deserve it, but we're going to let them be here. No. No one has given you anything. You earned your spot here. You deserve to be here, and don't you let anyone tell you any different. Because that's what imposterism does. It tries to undermine our belief in ourselves. Don't let it do that. We believe in you, and we hope that you believe in yourself. And it is our job at this university to create the environment that is conducive to your ability to maximize your potential. And so, that's all I got for y'all. So I hope that you like it.